Welcome to the Unmuted Podcast. My name's Jeff. I'm your host of this podcast where we talk about all things HR, talent, HR tech, AI, our world of work. We drop new episodes every Thursday morning, and all of our guests are from all different parts of the world. North America mostly. They're all in HR, talent, HR tech, and we talk about all of these different topics. And these episodes live on our YouTube channel and also on our website at GoScaleHR.com. So please subscribe on YouTube so you get notified. You can share your comments, want to hear from you as well. And so this is a really good topic episode. It's titled Skills-Based Organizations, the Future of Work in an AI World. So something that I love to talk about, and I know that our guest does too. And we'll bring Jonathan in shortly. But I just wanted to make a couple of key points first. And so this is a really interesting topic because it represents a shift. And so organizations are trying, they're talking about it. They're moving from job-based structures, what we see as an old school org chart with the boxes and the people's names and the titles and all that, and the lines everywhere. They dotted lines and all that good jazz, which most of us know about. Moving from that kind of a job-based structure to more of a skills-focused model. And the idea there is it's trying to make teams more agile, adaptable, flexible. They can pivot more quickly, and it's based on true skill sets. And so that's really what this shift is. It's not happening in droves right now. It's a bit of a hodgepodge, and John will speak to it. But that's the first point that I want to make. Second point, AI is obviously, I've said this a million times in the last 18 months, is a game changer. And so AI is transforming how skills are actually identified, developed, deployed, and it's reshaping work for employees. HR, it's not taking over everyone's jobs, so we're going to be unemployed and the robots are just going to roll in. That's not happening, but it is changing how we think about work, and especially in this context here when we talk about skills-based org. So just want to frame this conversation here, but this isn't about me. This is about our guest. Jonathan Braunstein is an expert in all things HR, tech, AI, based in Montreal. I don't speak French, so neither does John. Well, maybe he does. And so, John, I just want to welcome you to the Unmuted Podcast.
Hey, thanks, Jeff. Bonjour tout le monde. Yes, I do speak French, not as natives, but I do. Yeah, thanks for having me on the podcast, Jeff.
Fantastic. So we've known each other for a bit now. So maybe you can just tell our audience what you do.
Yeah. So I've been working in the HR space for about 15, 20 years. I'd say half of my career has been as an external consultant and half as a leader building HR teams. And I think something that's been central to the work that I've been doing over my career is really figuring out how to maximize people's skills for the benefit of themselves and the organization. And so the world is changing in such a great way these days that makes a lot of the work that I've been doing leading up to this point really relevant and really applicable. And I tend to work with organizations that are either scaling or transforming or are trying to figure out how to thrive during this period of disruption. So that's
fantastic.
Me.
So we'll share contact information with our viewers so they can contact you. So be prepared for the onslaught of messages on LinkedIn. I just noticed that I'm actually using a mug that says bonjour on it. Not intentional. I didn't mean to do that, but here it is. So bonjour, everyone. Okay, so just diving into our topic of skills-based orgs, I guess my question is, so how do you define a skills-based org? And then why is this shift happening now?
Yeah, I think in your intro, you pretty much hit it on the head. We are going through a total shift right now. And the thing that I'll say before I really dive into explaining what it means is that it's not new. Agile organizations or tech teams that follow, let's say, agile type of methodologies kind of do this naturally. Organizations that have structured themselves as self-managing or self-organizing, they tend to do this naturally. And just about every organization that we're in already implements skills-based practices. If you've been on a job rotation, that's a skills-based practice. If you're part of a community of practice or some kind of guild or transversal learning function, that's a skills-based practice. So a lot of organizations are already doing this. What's changing now is our ability to do it at scale. And what's also changing, you mentioned it, is AI, making it a lot easier for us to hit that scale. And the signals in the environment that tell me that it's prime time for skills-based organizations is that really big organizations are doing this, like Unilever. Some of the banks that I'm speaking with in Canada have been experimenting with this quite heavily over the last few years. There's big tech companies like Gloat and TechWolf that their whole business model is betting on organization moving towards skills-based. And you have big consulting firms like Deloitte, Korn Ferry, Josh Bersin that are really pushing a skills-based organization. So the movement, it's there, it's growing. And so how would I define it? Essentially, it's organizations that shift from job-based org design to skills-based org design. It's organizations that are moving from, I'm going to put Jeff in a box with a job description saying, Jeff, this is what you're good at, and so this is what you're going to do. Anytime you exit this box, you may succeed or you might not. The organization might let you or might not. I was thinking actually about that. So you might get that slap in the hand or they might enable you. Whereas in a skills-based organization, they're looking at everybody as a whole unique person. They're looking at not just the skills that they have due to the job description of the job that they're sitting in, the chair that they're sitting in over here, but you as a whole person, all the skills that you might have accrued before you join the organization. And so they look at that amalgamation of skills and experiences, and then they try to match people with the best kind of work to deliver on business outcomes linked to their skills. So it's not so much about job descriptions anymore. This allows organizations to pivot, to respond quickly to new market demands, new opportunities, because they're not stuck with these rigid definitions of roles. They can really allocate people to the right place very, very quickly to deliver work.
So that's a really different way of thinking about orgs, right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it's like the opposite of what we've been trained to do as an HR community, which is probably one of the reasons why the wide adoption has not been there on a large scale, because how we pay people, compensate people, how we manage performance, like everything is based on the old model, right?
Exactly.
So just diving into the AI thing, I figured we can just sort of dive into, AI because I love it. And so how is AI, and you touched on this, a little bit, enabling or accelerating the move towards skills-based workforce?
Yeah, I'd say there's two parts to this answer. Okay, so the first is what AI is actually doing at work. And the second is how it will impact work and how we structure and lead and the kind of culture that we build. So maybe focusing on the first part of that answer, AI is doing a few things. So first, it's making our ability to identify and infer people's skills a lot easier, and to track the evolution of those skills to make it a lot easier. And so, for example, I don't know if you've built skills and knowledge matrices or any of your audience members, if they have, they're great. You've tried. Yeah, it's okay. It's a dialogue. But, you could do it. You could technically do it with a team in 2 to 3 hours, but it's obsolete in 1 month. And so it's fun to build. It's a nightmare to keep up. And it's hard to derive the value from it after 1 or 2 or 3 months. And so what AI is doing is making very easy to not only identify, but to make educated guesses and to keep those skills up to date. And the extent that it does this today is pretty wild. Like, our first inclination is to think AI is going to scan your resume or your LinkedIn and understand, okay, these are the skills that you have, which is true, but it could do more. It understands context. So you have platforms, for example, that says, oh, okay, you were working at this organization in this role during these years. And during these years, based on news reports, this organization was going for an IPO. So therefore, because you were working in that context, you probably also have these additional experiences or these additional skills that don't appear anywhere on your resume, for example. So it goes a lot deeper into understanding. AI also helps with personalization of learning. So I understand the AI understands exactly what you need, what your skills are at today, where the organization is going from an outcome perspective, and it can build learning paths. And it really takes learning. And I think learning departments are going to really experience a lot of disruption already now, because there's already applications that exist that bring learning right into the flow of work. So rather than having a coach or a human being a teacher, you have an app that is following, for example, salespeople. You're on, let's say, on a call like this, on a video call with a client, and the app is listening to what you're saying, is observing your facial movements, is observing, are you talking too fast, too slow? Are you asking questions or just making statements? And it's coaching you live while you're on the phone with your client, right? It knows all your rebuttals, all your features, and it's listening to what the client is saying, and it's giving you recommendations on what you can say to address what the client is saying. So just think about like live learning on the spot when you need it most. It's there. And this isn't future thinking, like it's present, it's happening now. You can dial into Google AI Studios. We all have access to it more or less for free. You can share a screen with it, and then you can talk to the AI like you're talking to a human. You're looking at an Excel sheet, you're having a trouble figuring something out. And so you ask Google AI Studios, hey, I'm having trouble making sense of this data. Help me understand it. And it'll go ahead and it'll help you understand it. That's unprecedented from a learning perspective. So, I mean, I can go on and on AI is doing, but it speeds up work on everything from how we recruit to how we build job descriptions to how we define what work is required to deliver on an outcome, to what skills are required, to who can do it. It can do a lot for us these days.
Yeah, I think you touched on quite a few things perfectly. I think the message here is that it basically takes everything that we've been doing and just kind of accelerates it. It just pumps it with full of steroid to the power of more steroid. So that's a perfect context, and so that segues me into the next part, which is really about people. So what does this shift and all of the stuff that you just talked about mean for people, employees? Into how should employees, rethink career development and even job security?
Yeah, that's a big question. We could probably do, we could probably do a whole episode just on that, just that one question. And so, there's a training, a workshop that I do for organizations these days to help them understand about what life is going to look like for their employees, their leaders, and for HR, not in 10 years from now, but in 3 years from now, 2 years from now, because of AI. And so one of the stories that I go into is about what the day in the life of an employee could look like. And so maybe I'll just take like 2-3 minutes and give us a bit of a sense of what an employee's life could look like in 2 to 3 years. And I say could very loosely. What I actually mean is that in organizations that are doing this today, it already looks like that for them today. But it's not happening en masse. It's not happening at scale. So most organizations, this will feel foreign to. But this isn't wishful thinking. It's legit. It's happening now. And so, I want to kind of imagine the life of a data analyst. Okay, so an employee, a data analyst in a tech company that have fully integrated AI into their flow of work. And so imagine, they wake up, they get a notification from their company's AI system, their internal talent marketplace, and they're this, let's call him Mark, he's being informed that he's now been paired with a new project analyzing customer behavior. So in the past, Mark would have had to do all the data cleansing, all the organizing, all the first level analysis. Now he shows up to work. He's been given a new project that's matching his skills and matching his aspirations. And a lot of the basic legwork has already been done through automation. So think about now he's putting his effort on more creative work, more strategic thinking, more long-term impact, more in-depth analysis of that first pass that the AI did. And he's also now working in a different kind of environment. So in the past, he might have worked alone, figured something out, pass it on to somebody else, or maybe he's bottlenecked, waiting for somebody else to come in and pair up with him to do a certain task. But now he's working more like in a team-based environment. So imagine a world where he's working in a cross-functional team with different departments, people from different countries. He also has external gig workers that are working with him on this project, will disappear in 2 weeks from now, but are there as an equal team member today. And he's collaborating with somebody in Spain that doesn't speak English, but on their Zoom call, that person sounds in their voice like they're talking in English, their lips are moving in English, and he is talking to them in Spanish with his lips moving in Spanish while they're all talking their own respective languages. AI is doing all that. So a lot of the barriers between teams, between countries, between permanent versus temporary employees, all that's disappearing, right? And he's working in a more fluid environment. For 2 weeks, he's working on a project that really leverages skill X. And then a month after that, he's working on a project that leverages skill Y. And so there's a lot of variability in his work, which he'll probably find exciting. And he gets real-time feedback and learning, like I mentioned earlier, his work, right? There's no waiting for a manager to approve, to send him to go learn something. He's just learning live every single day. And one thing that I want to name that's also changing, because people always think about the good stuff, it's not all peachy. There's complications, there's more challenges. The new tension that he's living with today is because he's doing less tactical work. He's now in an environment where he wants to do more strategic stuff, and that's putting upward pressure on his leader. So there's a little bit more tension between him and his leader because he wants to do more strategic work, and naturally he might feel entitled to do so. He's also probably becoming less collaborative with people outside of his direct group and a little bit more impatient. Why? Because AI, ChatGPT, can answer 70% of any question that any expert that he might be waiting for that's just not showing up on time when he wants it. He can get 70, 80% of the way there. So team dynamics are changing. Innovations starts to suffer a little bit. Things are becoming a little bit more complex from an interaction perspective. So given what I just shared, there's a few things that are different for him. Just to summarize it, he has more opportunities for growth and learning. He's going to be more attracted to organizations that offer that ease of learning and growth. When you look at people's onboarding, biggest reason is career development, mobility. And I would say that in a nutshell is a description of what this shift means for employees and how they are to rethink career development or job security. The best advice that I've heard and that I've given is start learning how to use automation and AI tools now, because your job probably isn't going away, but the basic tasks of your job are probably going to go away. And for it to go away and for you to still be valuable, you need to know how to use automation and AI to take advantage of all that automation so that you can focus on strategic things. If you don't learn how to use AI, you'll be stuck still playing with a paper and pen while other people are clicking a button and getting an answer right away.
I think that's the perfect overview. And I know that a lot of people that are listening to this episode will ask, well, does that example, that case study that you just talked about, which is software development, like data analyst, can that happen in the world of HR? And the answer is yes. And it's happening now. Right.
Yeah.
So all of you directors, HR managers, consultants, generalists, talent people, this can also apply to you too. I've seen it firsthand, and I'm sure you have too, right? So I guess the message here is being agile. It allows you to be agile and flexible and speed. So for those of you who are still dabbling in it and not sure, dive in. Please dive in, because you will be left further behind. And it's not just sort of a little bit behind. That bell curve is now a massive bell curve. It's no longer like this. It gets like this. And so for people who can't embrace it and face the fear and learn, it's going to be a really tough go. And I hate to be Debbie Downer here. I'm just trying to instill fear in you, because that is a political tactic that tends to work well. And this podcast is not about politics yet, but I'm just saying it's really important, right? To start to dive into this stuff.
It's a big, it's definitely a big driver of behavior. People need that wake up call to understand that this storm is coming, whether they want to deal with it or not. It's coming, it's here for some. And at a minimum, just starting that journey of using artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, anything that you already have through your enterprise will at a minimum give you speed, whereas you didn't have that speed before. One simple example. Right. Within like 30 minutes of working with somebody last week at one of the workshops that I was hosting on using AI in the context of HR, she exclaimed, after 15 minutes of toying with it, she's like, I can't believe in 5 minutes I did what took me 2 weeks to do. She was building this presentation, it was taking her 2 weeks to build this presentation, and AI built the slides for her in 5 minutes. And she looked at what it created. She looked at what she built over 2 weeks, and she was like, it was practically the same, same. So 5 minutes versus many hours of work. Just getting that gain will be a game changer at work.
So I just want to ask you a question. So that targeted at the HR leader, because that's sort of what I've been involved with too. And so when you're looking at how should HR leaders adapt their talent strategies to build a more agile, skill-driven workforce? It's a bit of a loaded question, but is there something where they can start, maybe shift their mindset? What do you have to say to that?
Yeah. So I'll rapid fire like a few of these. Okay. So the first is you need to really work with your total rewards team to figure out how to reward and compensate people for going out and learning a bunch of new skills and learning those new skills quickly. and not just learning them, but learning them in a way that they can apply it and where the business can derive some kind of outcome. There's a large bank that I've been speaking with that have been experimenting with this for about 2 to 3 years. And by experimenting, they're doing it with a department of 10,000 people out of like a 100,000 person organization. And they came up with a pay for skill system that pays people at the end of every single year for every new critical skill, critical that's really important for the business to have, a one-time bonus. So it's a way for people to derive a financial benefit from that extra effort without locking in finance, which finance doesn't want to have their back up against the wall on something like this, with a permanent increase in pay for that new skill. So they give people bonuses every year. So one thing is getting very creative on how you're going to reward and recognize people for those new skills to incentivize them. And the second, I would say, is getting better at building the muscle around strategic workforce planning, not as a once a year exercise, but as a regular thinking around what are the skills that we need in our organization to succeed, not just workforce planning in terms of how many people do I need to be able to produce this much revenue. It's important, but what are the critical skills that we need? How scarce is it in the market? How trainable is it internally? And then so that can inform what kind of skills do we buy versus borrow versus build versus bot, as in BOT, like an agent and AI. What do we automate? Implementing those two practices alone, I think, helps build the foundation for organizations to start moving in a skills-based manner. And the other thing to say is it's not a one-size-fits-all. So an HR team, even if really enamored by skills-based organization, don't try to like boil the ocean over here. It's really just focusing on a few key departments that would really are suffering from a skill deficit and applying that kind of skills-based organizing principles over there and leaving the rest as is. Just focusing over there so that you can win.
I think that's a really good lesson. And I think I would just add to that is to not try to copy what the other organizations might be doing, because they are doing things that make sense, for them, and that may not make sense for you. So the idea to be really smart about it. And I think starting small, like, that you said is the change management 101 tactic. So you can't boil this ocean's big, okay, and deep and dangerous and full of sharks and killer whales and all that good stuff. Loch Ness monsters too. Anyway, so lastly, John, so this has been great. I mean, I can go on for hours on this, but we're not going to. If there's one thing that our viewers can take away from what you've said, everything that you've said, what would that one thing be?
I would say, I didn't actually word this out, but if there's one key thing to focus on to help move in this direction is for people to be willing to jump into skills-based type of work. They need to feel safe at work. They need to feel that they can experiment, learn, because with learning comes failure and comes mistakes, and people need to know that they can make those mistakes. And so I think in HR teams, one of their first key steps to prepare the ground is to really work on that psychological safety and choose parts of the organization where they might want to experiment with skills-based practices, the parts of the organization that score very highly on their engagement from a psychological safety perspective. Because without that, people aren't going, even with all the incentives and all the push from a change perspective that you might put in place, people aren't going to take that leap. And so really finding parts of the organization that are ready to make mistakes in front of each other and learn together, that's probably going to be your highest chance of success in terms of this experimentation.
I think that's fantastic, and I can't you much better. I want to thank you for being here. I really do. And I think that we'll have many more conversations about this stuff. I already wrote some notes down here, which I don't normally do. Great. So this is a really, really important topic. I really believe that. And I do different types of topics. Obviously, this podcast is all about world of work, which covers many different topics and challenges. And so once again, the Unmuted podcast is all about world of work, HR tech, HR talent, and the episodes are dropped every Thursday morning on our YouTube channel. So hit a like button, share your thoughts and comments. Want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts and comments. Also on our website. So John, I want to thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jeff.